The story began with a sharp and unexpected dispute when the leader of the hero group, Nardo, announced the immediate exile of our character Eris Falry. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, the heroes doubted whether it was some kind of joke. But Nardo's obvious anger did not hint at any trickery. He wanted Eris to disappear from his sight immediately. People at the scene watched the heated argument and wondered what had happened. However, they wisely kept their distance, did not want to get involved in the conflict, and quickly withdrew before the situation escalated. Nardo admitted that Eris's enhancement magic was indeed useful, but considered Eris simply a potion that could be easily replaced. He further claimed that the party did not need such a burden, in a fit of uncontrollable rage. Nardo even accused Eris of stealing experience points. In this world, defeating monsters granted experience points that increased strength, and these points were evenly distributed among team members. Eris realized that they had expelled him because they just wanted more experience for themselves. When Joris tried to explain, Nardo completely ignored his words, declared the dismissal final, and rudely ordered him to leave. Other members also kept their distance, indicating that he had simply read the situation. Before finally leaving, Eris asked once more if they were truly satisfied with him leaving the hero squad. But they almost called him persistent and said that they would finally get rid of such ballast as him. Erased part and moved on. He thought that this did not need to be explained. It was clear that the party relied on his charms to work. However, they rejected him, not understanding. He always thought that usually sooner or later they would return to take him, looking worried, but now he decided not to return. Ares joined the team of heroes to avenge the demon lord who took his family and to prevent new misfortunes. But outside the team, his primary task was to stabilize his own life. Thinking about the future, he decided to get an adventurer's license. Soon he reached the guild house and approached the receptionist, who kindly offered her help. When he was arrested, he was offered to become an adventurer. She immediately looked at the clock and told him that he came just in time for the exam, then asked how he wanted to proceed next. He replied that, if possible, he would like to take the exam immediately. She immediately gave him a registration form to fill out, and quickly wrote his name and profession. He is a wizard and helps group members with enhancement magic, a skill he was born with. Did she scan the completed form? She hesitantly asked if he was from the hero team. Eros thought how quickly she recognized him just by name and job. Although he knew that if it became known about his exclusion from the hero party, it would be a problem. Quickly orienting himself, Eris denied any connection, said it was a common name and that he had no relation to the hero team. Then he slyly asked about the content of the exam to divert her attention. She explained that there were a total of 4 tests: magic power test, target shooting test, practical test, and final test. She explained in detail that he needed to pass all 4, but he was allowed unlimited attempts and was wished good luck. She led him to the testing location. At first, she led him to the room designated for testing magical power. This would be the first measurement of Evers's magical power after joining the team of heroes, and he was confident he would manage. In the room, on a stand atop a pedestal, lay a single polished crystal neatly, and she placed her hand on it. She demonstrated how the test was conducted. A touch to the crystal absorbed magic and showed its power level. Brighter glow indicated greater magical power, while dimmer meant less. When the crystal barely glowed from her touch, Aureus asked about the passing score. She replied that for her level of magical power it was difficult, but if it glowed a little brighter, it would be considered successful. She also noted that even without being an adventurer, she could handle a decent amount of magic, hinting that for him it shouldn't be too difficult. Ayres placed his hand on the crystal and decided to try anyway. As soon as he touched the surface, it shone with a bright light. This momentarily blinded the receptionist. Ayres decided that the bright light meant he passed the test. When he turned to ask the receptionist about the result, her legs gave way and she fell, which made him think he might have messed something up. She quickly apologized for her unexpected reaction and admitted that she had never seen anything like it before. Gathering her thoughts, she focused again on Arrow's magic. And as he continued to channel his power into the crystal began to heat up so much that it became unbearable. He asked whether the crystal would withstand this strain or crack, but she assured him that it was strong, adding that she had never heard of such a thing. To their great surprise, the crystal began to noticeably crack. Then it instantly split into 2 parts. Seeing this, Eris began to wonder what it meant. The receptionist fell to the floor again. Trembling, she spoke quietly. She was amazed at how it happened, since the crystal should withstand even S-rank magic, and she began to suspect that Aris was truly from the hero party. But he immediately dismissed her suspicion, saying it was common sense that a mage from the hero party would not aspire to become an adventurer. He extended his hand to help her up, and most importantly, inquired about the test results. She assured him that he had definitely passed the test. Meanwhile, he apologized for the inconvenience caused and admitted that due to the broken crystal, further tests were currently impossible. But she noted that it was unexpected, and the guild should have anticipated such a result in advance when she began examining the broken crystal. She accidentally scratched her hand and started bleeding. Harris immediately took her hand and said that it was quite an unspectacular injury. He offered to heal her wound with his magic. The injury quickly healed, and she was amazed that Harris not only possessed magic but could also heal. It was usually believed that mages only used enhancement spells for attack or defense, and few understood what it meant to grant some properties. Without hesitation, he asked if there was a problem with him using healing magic as a mage, and she did not object. He even offered to repair the crystal, which surprised her, and she asked if it was really possible when he began pouring his healing magic into the cracked crystal. The crystal noticeably began to restore itself. Soon it was like new, and she thanked him upon seeing this. Meanwhile, Eurus modestly noted that the damage initially happened because of him. He then clarified if the next test would be a practical shooting test, and she confirmed. He was told to strike the target with magic or a sword, and his evaluation would depend on the strength of the attack. Standing before the next evaluation spot, the receptionist confidently said that the next shooting training would be easy thanks to Eurus's magical power, and Aris, as an enchantment mage, asked her not to expect too much from him. He emphasized that his role was support. Deep down, he believed he could still pass this test. Soon she took him to the training ground, where several straw mannequins lay on the ground nearby. She demonstrated the task, made a magic sphere, struck the target with it, and explained to him that the target would glow depending on the strength of the attack. The passing criterion was to exceed his current attack power, and only the strongest of 3 attempts was considered. She also allowed him to use either a sword or magic for this trial. He briefly thought that he could wield the sword using enhancement magic, but if he chose magic, he wouldn't need any tools at all. Despite this, he said that either option would do, but magic was more convenient, so he decided to proceed that way, and the receptionist, seeing how easily he chose, was a bit surprised before agreeing. He chose Fireball, a simple spell for beginners, available to many support roles. Since he had only 3 chances, he decided to use the initial spell on the first attempt. And for the second, he planned to score high using an enchantment spell, keeping the plan in mind. He created an excessively large fireball and threw it toward the target. He noticed that even the fireball had its limits, but as soon as he turned around, he was surprised to see the receptionist's stunned reaction. She called his abilities crazy and said she was blinded for a moment, and Eros calmly added that he wasn't even trying his hardest. She was even more surprised when she found out that he had not yet used all of his power. As soon as the fog from the previous strike dissipated, the receptionist was embarrassed by the damage, because not only was the target mannequin destroyed, but the explosion also affected the neighboring mannequins. Eris inquired whether the mannequins were supposed to break, but she answered no. Although they were now clearly broken, she also considered this test passed. And regarding the last 2 shots, she told him that there was no need to continue, because he had already easily passed the evaluation. She pointed to the damaged arena and said that with such destruction, it should not continue further. Saying nothing, Oris activated healing magic and instantly restored the destroyed area, returning all the mannequins he had destroyed, and she immediately noticed that although they could now continue the exams, it was still unnecessary. In the end, Joris passed the target shooting test with a single fireball. The next trial was a practical exam, where he, as the examiner, had to face a rank C participant in a one-on-one duel. Only those who passed this stage were allowed to the final exam. Rank E novices usually advanced to D and C by completing guild tasks and gaining practical experience. Travelers of rank C and above were generally considered established. Therefore, for the practical exam, the risk had to be approved by the examiner, who had the status of a true adventurer. When he entered the arena, he noticed that he was not the only candidate. There were many others here for the exam as well. The receptionist said that rarely do people of Ares' caliber pass all the exams in one day. On the other hand, the examiner Chris stood before the candidates and noticed that they were significantly younger than him. He apologized for their weight and said he would be their opponent in the practical exam. He explained that they needed to choose a fighting style for the duel, sword, or magic. the duel would end when one side could no longer continue fighting or surrendered, and the course of the duel would determine whether they passed or failed. Then he confidently told them to approach him with a clear intention to win. Eris raised his hand and asked how the points would be counted, since their success depended on how the tools worked. Chris explained that the exam simulated real requests and essentially tested whether the candidates were capable of passing the final exam. They would assess basic compatibility, crisis management skills, and overall ability to evaluate the situation. Hearing this, Eris thought the evaluation criteria seemed quite vague. Although it was not the answer he wanted, he still decided to continue and inquired whether he would pass if he defeated Chris. Chris said with a confident smile that he would definitely pass if he proved he could. He also noted that when he won with guarantee a pass, he never lost to any candidate who made such a claim. Hearing this, Aris thought that even in a support role he was a member of the hero squad, and although the fight would be tough, he was confident he would not lose. Moreover, he was comforted by the thought that victory would guarantee him passage, and then Chris called the first candidate in line and invited her to step forward and challenge him. The girl stepped forward, and Aris felt relieved because he avoided the first clash, which gave him time to carefully think through his strategy. When the fight began, the girl actively used her magical skills, and Aris thought that her future looked bright for someone her age. While Chris was preparing, Aris noticed that he read her magical flow and skillfully redirected the attack. Chris rushed at the candidate at full speed. The girl noticeably flinched. This made Aris wonder if perhaps she had anticipated such a complete failure. She was more skilled than her peers, but it seemed her arrogance let her down. In a moment, Chris hovered over her neck, and she immediately surrendered. Chris assessed her skills, said that her attack was strong, but after an unsuccessful attempt to deliver a preemptive strike, she turned out to be completely unprepared for what happened next. With such a skill level, Chris said she did not deserve to pass. He advised her to try again next time, but only after she significantly improved her skills, and when tears welled up in her eyes, she had to leave the hall. After her, Aris performed. As soon as Chris checked the form, he was surprised to see a booster mage taking the exam. Ares also knew that booster mages were rare among ordinary adventurers. Positions granted by the heavens were usually quite specialized, while most were either wizards or swordsmen. There were rare roles, such as booster mages, healers, and even unique professions specializing in certain skills. Chris openly wondered whether a booster mage really had practical application. And Ares confirmed his intention to rely on it, saying that he currently had no sword. Chris then showed the rule that Ares clearly did not know. Candidates are forbidden to bring their own swords or staffs to the exam. They must take weapons from the guild. He also explained that swords noticeably differ in combat power, depending on the type. And for a fair assessment, both candidates and examiners must use swords provided by the guild. Hearing this, Aris decided to borrow a sword from the guild. And Chris immediately waved to the receptionist to bring another one. He noted that he had never met a person who could simultaneously use magic and a sword, called Aris a magic swordsman, and added that such ingenuity is useless if both his skills turn out to be weak. When the receptionist brought the sword and the fight began, Chris allowed Aris to start whenever he felt ready. It seemed Chris was ready to let him strike first again, although victory by a surprise attack did not bring satisfaction. So he decided to make his first strike carefully and moderately. At first, he cast 4 enhancement spells on himself, which increased his movement speed, attack power, and accuracy. After that, he also strengthened his sword with magic. Meanwhile, Chris was impressed watching Evras's skill and the fact that he could even enchant his sword. With amazing speed, Evras rushed at the examiner and simultaneously. He cunningly cast 4 spells on Chris and his sword that weakened their power. He immediately applied effects that reduced movement speed and attack speed, as well as Chris's attack power and accuracy. Chris was amazed by Evras's incredible power. It seemed to him that his body and sword were like pulling a mountain. He could not understand what had happened in such a short time. With a lightning strike, Eras successfully made an attack. But instead of hitting Chris, it tore off his wig, which now lay on the ground. The observers were completely bewildered by this, and Chris thought it was an unexpected turn of events and he could do nothing about it. When Eris stood right behind Chris, he sincerely apologized for the unexpected behavior, and Chris, noticeably trembling in voice and body, quickly said not to worry, although Eris felt guilty because of Chris's embarrassment. He was not going to hold back in this decisive duel. Activating step enhancement magic, he quickly drew a precise magic circle and carefully directed its energy into his legs. Then he moved so fast that he seemed to simply vanish from everyone's sight, and Chris could not comprehend our sudden disappearance. Eris almost imperceptibly appeared right behind him and pressed the cold blade of his sword tightly against Chris' knee, which meant the end of the duel and brought Eris victory. Chris accepted defeat with dignity, and the other candidates were stunned, seeing such a powerful demonstration of strength that even the examiner gave up. They could not understand who this new candidate was, who so easily defeated a level C examiner. Chris and Horace introduced themselves to each other. Chris asked if he really was a wizard from the hero group, and Eris immediately denied it. He doubted whether Chris really believed that one of the hero group members would pass such exams. At that moment, he was intently looking at Chris's shiny bald head. Eris apologized, but Chris quickly waved it off, saying he understood it was not intentional. It was at that moment that Eris offered to help him instantly grow hair, which surprised Chris greatly because he doubted whether such a thing was even possible. Without hesitation, Eris placed his hand on Chris's head, and at that very moment, his bald head was miraculously replaced by lush, thick dark hair, and Chris was left speechless. Overwhelmed with emotions, Chris sincerely thanked him, and immediately counted Joris as successful on the test, advancing him directly to the final test. Soon Eris arrived at the northeastern forest of Isle, near the village of Bergam, the site of the final trial. He needed to collect certain items. The receptionist had previously told him that he needed to collect 20 life force herbs for the potion. Within the strict 5-hour limit, he had the strategic choice to either completely avoid fights or engage in them while effectively gathering the necessary herbs. Life force herbs were the main ingredient of the potion that restored health and mana, and in higher-ranked hunting grounds, they grew better due to the concentrated magical energy around. Hare thought that collecting 20 herbs in 5 hours was quite difficult for an E-rank adventurer, but the receptionist advised him to try hard because there would be a reward for success. Eris was glad about this prospect because any earnings were always to her liking. The Isle forest itself was relatively high level and suitable for adventurers, but the monsters there were generally manageable by a single player. As he went deeper into the forest, soon a group of about 10 herds appeared before him, and he confidently said that collecting 20 would not be difficult. Suddenly, from somewhere appeared a green. Suddenly appearing, a fierce rat-like creature rushed at him at full speed, and Eris instantly assessed that although his defense was weak, the attack was very wild due to sharp and poisonous fangs. However, Eris suddenly struck the rat hard with her foot, throwing it to the ground. The smarter the monsters were, the more cunning they had. The creatures that saw Eris wisely decided to retreat, which undoubtedly would have simplified the task for Russus. After some time, he gathered all the necessary herbs and headed back to the guild. Suddenly out of nowhere, Arrows heard a piercing scream of a girl desperately calling for help, and he moved forward to check the commotion. He found a young girl and fell into an ambush of a threatening pack of blue wolves, and due to the lack of noticeable landmarks in their territory, lone travelers often found it difficult to conduct effective reconnaissance. Suddenly the wolf lunged and attacked the girl named Cilia, biting her wrist with its sharp fangs. Cilia's defense was in ruins, and her equipment turned out to be useless. She desperately tried to get a healing potion, but she accidentally dropped it, and it fell to the ground. Those fierce beasts bared their sharp fangs and prepared to attack, then immediately rushed at her, threw her back, and she hit a tree. Cilia reached for the discarded healing potion, but it was slightly out of her reach. At that moment, a wolf loomed threateningly over her, ready to attack, but Eris could no longer bear to watch this horror. Experienced theft was taboo among adventurers. At first, Eris decided not to interfere in their fight, but seeing Cilia's helplessness, he could not stay aside. Effortlessly, he cast powerful enhancement spells specially designed for women, significantly increasing her defense and magical resilience, as well as boosting her healing power and greatly accelerating her movements. He cunningly applied debuffs to the aggressive creatures, slowing their movement, reducing their attack strength, and even lowering their accuracy. Finally, he empowered himself, and the wolves attacked her. Cilia instinctively closed her eyes in horror, but when she cautiously opened them again, she was very surprised to see an unfamiliar figure nearby, actively helping her defeat the terrifying wolves, and Iris calmly advised her to stay closer to him because the danger was still near. He realized that the true essence of buff magic lies in granting properties, and most such effects can be replicated. In other words, enhancement magic can indeed be used for offensive actions. Then Eris boldly cast a powerful magical circle that stood out, and instantly destroyed the entire pack of wolves, leaving Cilia completely speechless. A few wolves that survived the first attack immediately fled the scene, and then Eris gently grabbed her by the shoulder and pulled her closer, saying she was standing too close to the smoldering fire, warning that this could have serious consequences if she fell under his influence. However, the presence of another girl distracted Eris. His face reddened, but he managed to keep his composure. He knew he could not afford to be distracted in such an extraordinary situation. Shortly after they safely escaped immediate danger, Celia bowed before him and generously thanked him for his timely help, and Eris replied that it was nothing to him. Celia called it an understatement and asked if he was a high-ranking adventurer. To her surprise, he answered that he was not officially a traveler yet and would become one only when he returned those herbs to the elders. He also inquired why Celia was alone in such a dangerous place and noted that lack of strength could be fatal for lone adventurers. Her initial hesitation quickly turned into determination when she confidently said that she wanted to become a hero. He asked if she wanted to join the hero squad, and her face lit up with enthusiasm as she answered. Once she was saved by a hero, and since then heroes had become her greatest inspiration. She admitted that she defeated high-level monsters to quickly accumulate experience. Now, after nearly losing her life due to recklessness, she seriously reconsidered her actions. Eris then told her that the swordsman's place in the hero squad was already taken, and it will be a rather thorny path for the one who chooses it, but Celia assured him not to worry because she is not a swordswoman. However, he said that she used a sword, although she herself was not a fencer. Celia immediately replied that her path did not correspond to any typical type of work, and she was convinced that one of the rarest unique professions should appear in the world. She declared with obvious admiration that she is a saint of the sword. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, in the southeast of the village Bergam, near the grave of Gerald's soldiers, Eris, a former heroine, and her party were surprised that they now receive a larger share of experience points, and even said that it is a very profitable way just to expel someone from the guild. Nardo confidently said that they would definitely cover the costs of those potions. Others also said that enhancement magic is easily replaced by simple store-bought potions, and that the expulsion of Oris really turned out to be the right decision. Then they together engage in battle with a fierce wyvern. While some members noticed that the monster that day seemed unusually resilient, they barely managed to keep up the pace, fighting an incredibly strong creature. They felt that its attacks were powerful and extremely harsh, and during the fight, one of them got a strength elixir so that everyone drank it. Meanwhile, Nardo Shriek ordered them to fight the monster seriously. After a joint struggle and many attempts, the team finally managed to defeat those who hesitated. Nardo said that they could easily handle even a formidable enemy on their own. Moreover, he claimed that it was just a coincidence that this wyvern was so strong, then ordered them not to lose momentum, but the other participants cautiously looked at each other, as they did not dare to speak carelessly in front of Nardo. Instead, Celia enthusiastically told Eris about her unusual job. She explained that the Sword Saint is a unique profession without analogs, and if she succeeds, she can become the highest evolution of a swordsman. She was confident that even she could become a hero if she put in the necessary effort and worked tirelessly to accumulate experience points. In turn, Eris explained that being a hero is not just about shine and rainbows, and that it came at a high cost. In response, Celia said that she knows being a heroine is hard, but she is determined to go on an adventure with Eris and believes she has no other choice but to become a heroine. When she pronounced his name so casually, Eris was breathless. He was very surprised when his name was suddenly mentioned in the conversation. Eris then asked why she even wanted to go on an adventure with him. Celia carelessly admitted that she had fallen in love with him and wanted to go on an adventure together to get closer. Hearing her sincere confession, Eris quietly laughed. But he quickly assured her that he was not laughing at her dreams. He later did not understand how she could trust him so easily if they had just met. She replied that he risked his life to save her. She also told about a disturbing memory 3 years ago when the Demon King's army invaded her native village Ruria. The demon captured her and immediately said he would get rid of her because he considered her inexperienced. When she was on the brink of death, she was saved by a group of heroes. One hero even extended a gentle hand to help her. The scene returned to the present, and Eris recalled that he once saved a child about her age in the village Ruria, where the group of heroes stopped briefly, and confidently said that he saved Celia from the Rangit family. Foolish Events watched him closely, asked where he knew such precise details from. But upon closer inspection, everything quickly fell into place, and she noticed an impressive resemblance to the boy she had seen 3 years ago. Suddenly she realized that Eros was the same prudent legendary hero from those times. Harris now definitely knew that he was recognized as Silly, and Silly asked how one of the members of the hero squad was taking the adventurer exam. Eris calmly told her that he was suddenly kicked out of the hero team. Now he simply aspired to become an adventurer. Cilia was very happy about this. Suddenly met her savior. She was so surprised that she could not help but hug Ares, the very person she had longed to meet for so long. He then asked if she really wanted to form a party with him. Cilia firmly said that it would suit her perfectly, and Rast, seeing her decisive reaction, thought that she really intended to stay. Soon they reached the guild house, and the receptionist was surprised by their opponent who had appeared earlier. When she asked about herbs for vigor, Joris immediately summoned his inventory portal. He impressively laid out before her all the collected herbs and creatures he had defeated, subtly hinting that she should buy some materials. Seeing the inventory portal, the receptionist was very surprised and immediately inquired about its mysterious nature. However, Horace refused to tell. He stated that it was a company secret, but in reality, it was his item slot skill that allowed him to open a portal to another dimension using enhancement magic. It was a side effect he accidentally gained when using speed magic to interfere with spacetime. But no one else could open it, so it was almost useless for the group of heroes. The receptionist asked him to wait a moment while she processed the purchase. She also congratulated him on successfully passing the adventurer's exam. She handed him the guild certificate and advised him to keep it carefully, since reissuing it would cost a significant amount, 10,000 jewels. At that moment, Silly intervened and said she wanted to create a new party. Soon Eris and Silly left the old house, and the group formation procedure was finally completed. Silly suggested stopping by the nearby snack bar before returning. But Eris said that he had nowhere to spend the night that night, and therefore it was urgently necessary to find a place. Cilia very casually suggested to him to stay at the hotel where she was already living. However, Ares tried to explain that if she were a man, there would be no problems, but he was worried that something might happen if they decided to live in the same room. And the explanation, it seems, did not reach her, and she with big innocent eyes asked if he would like to live with her in the same room. He could not resist her simple innocence and decided to go to the cafe for now. Soon they arrived at the snack bar and were served several tasty dishes. Seeing the huge portions, Arik wondered if he could eat it all, and she told him not to worry because she eats quite a lot. He then asked if she was really serious about letting him stay in her room. She unconditionally agreed, saying with a joyful expression that she could eat that much and still rest with her beloved person. She later realized that the portion turned out to be a bit too large for her appetite, but Eris suggested eating the leftovers, saying that she really didn't need to force herself. When Eris started eating with the same spoon as her expression instantly changed. She thought it might be an indirect kiss. Seeing her embarrassment, he asked if she was okay, and she desperately tried to say that everything was fine. Soon they came to her room, and Eurus noticed that her place was not bad at all, and Silly said that. She carefully chose that very tavern after trying several others, and seeing that the room was quite spacious, he said there was enough space for him to rest comfortably. However, when he began spreading the sheet on the floor, she asked what he was doing. She later noted that he should rest in a normal bed, otherwise he might get sick. Embarrassed by her direct remark, Ors tried to explain the essence of the problem when a boy and a girl share one bunk. However, her innocent puppy look appeared again, and she quietly asked if he really didn't like the idea of resting with her. Heroes again couldn't resist her request and finally agreed. Lying in the same bunk as her, he felt very awkward, especially when she lay very close to him. Just then Silly quietly laughed and said that his trembling breath tickled her neck, so he immediately turned away. Through a rather narrow bunk, her body still pressed against his, and he blushed completely. The next morning, they noticed that Ares was energetically doing push-ups. Wizard skills are not mastered overnight. They required both endurance and broad knowledge, with ancient books of spells and nets playing a key role. Then Cilia woke up, cheerfully greeted him good morning, and asked why he woke up so early. Eris replied that he was just doing his daily exercise and had just completed his 1,000 push-ups, crunches, and squats. She was stunned by his strict daily routine and doubted whether he really followed it regularly. He indifferently asked if this was a usual routine for everyone, but she immediately denied it. This made him think that those heroes from his former party might have mocked the real effectiveness. With concern, she noted that although training is important, he should not overstrain himself to such extremes. To this, Eris openly said that he wants to defeat the Demon King and then live peacefully, assuring that he would not spare efforts for this great goal. He also stated that if they defeat the Demon King, the ubiquitous magical energy will disappear, and they will no longer have to fight battles. In this world, substances in the atmosphere were generally harmless to people, but could activate various monsters. The Demon King amplified this magical energy with powerful barriers and effectively drove these monsters insane. Ironically, Arrest had to become stronger to avoid fighting. Celia said that everyone truly wants a peaceful life, but added that these ambitions might be too great for him. Eris could not disagree with her, although this explanation was insufficient to fully understand everything. Then he told an old story that happened 6 years ago, where in their real village a partisan dungeon suddenly appeared. Unlike ordinary dungeons, if this dungeon is not cleared by sunset, monsters will constantly emerge from its depths. At that time, both of Orst's parents were respected rank adventurers and entrusted him with evacuating the villagers. Although he insisted on fighting alongside them, they did not want to involve someone who was not yet an adventurer in the battle. His parents were very strong, but that day he had a troubling premonition. It was exactly his 13th birthday, and his parents promised to celebrate with him. The dungeon remained untouched when the sun set, and due to the constant influx of monsters, even more adventurers tragically died. Being still a child, Eris already knew what happened to his parents and decided to become strong to avenge them both. Silly remembered the appearance of the partisan dungeon in the city and felt relieved that he was lucky to survive the attack. Heroes claimed that even more similar incidents would happen if the Demon King was not defeated, and he was determined to prevent such disasters at any cost. He also apologized for spoiling the mood, but Silly said that it was a very important topic for discussion. But Evers believed that there was no point in getting stuck in the past, and they were advised to eat before going to the guild. Cilia smiled kindly and advised him to take a quest as soon as they arrived. Soon they reached the guild, and Eurus Khan said that without coordinated teamwork, they would not be able to defeat the Demon King, so strengthening the entire group was extremely important. His first goal was to strengthen Cilia, so he decided to complete a task in a certain area. When Silly asked if he had found any suitable task, Orissa got ready and handed her a letter with the task, which was a request to destroy monstrous birds. She said she was not sure how much help she could provide in that task, but he told her directly that this quest that day was specially for her. Although it would be a bit difficult for Silia, she would gain a lot of experience points. However, she reluctantly took on the quest because she said her attacks wouldn't reach the birds. He asked if she really couldn't defeat flying enemies with a sword, and she replied that it was impossible from any angle. Seeing her determined reaction, Aura thought that she was too attached to her principles and that to truly reveal her talent as a swordmaster, she needed to overcome this obstacle. Without hesitation, he offered to teach her a simple trick to handle that task. The day passed and they soon arrived at South Road 227 near the village of Belva. Eris offered to demonstrate the technique. And when a monstrous bird attacked him, he calmly told her to channel magic into the sword, grip it tightly, and imagine it strengthening during the swing. Cilia was stunned to see his display of power, but he still had amazing tricks up his sleeve. Soon he aimed a blazing laser of magical waves into the sky and instantly destroyed the surrounding area. He stood still and said what he believed in, that even she could perform this trick just as well, but she denied it, shaking her head persistently. Wondering how such a thing could happen, he returned her the sword, but on the first try, it was quite difficult for her to take it. He began to explain that the main thing is to relax the shoulders and allow the magic to flow smoothly when swinging the sword. Following the advice, Cilia agreed and swung the sword, but her movements were quite awkward and inexperienced, so Iris came closer, firmly grasped both her hands, and suggested practicing together a bit. This action made Cilia blush. He noticed her tension and, suspecting nothing, asked if everything was all right, but she quickly declined and tried to focus on the training. He briefly instructed her to breathe in unison and strengthen her magic with a steady rhythm. A powerful magical beam burst from her sword and instantly struck down the terrible bird. Eris asked her to maintain that rhythm and then try a solo. She agreed and performed it herself. Her strikes constantly missed the target, but he encouraged her to do her best. Even when her strikes missed a bit, Cilia kept training and soon effortlessly applied the technique he taught her, and her accuracy sharply increased. Soon they only had to defeat one more monster to successfully complete the task. Meanwhile, Eris constantly praised her for her exceptional skills as a sword saint. Yes, he warned her not to lower her guard until the very end. Although Eris was ready to help in case of problems, it seemed they would handle the quest without difficulties. At that moment, his attention was immediately drawn when Silly informed him about the magical birds. Because of this, we are now completely leaving the scene. However, their escape looked strange for creatures that were simply afraid of Celia, because small magical birds usually do not fly away unless something is really wrong. At the same moment, a great fluctuation appeared. This completely caught Celia by surprise, as she anxiously asked what she could do in such a situation. However, Eris showed no slightest fear or surprise. Instead, he calmly noted that this last target simply appeared. He thought that Celia effortlessly destroyed all the magical birds with one strike, and with such power, she should easily handle that waver herself, and he was overwhelmed with terrible anxiety. She wondered if he really asked her to fight that huge monster alone, but he calmly explained that it would actually be easier for her to hit such a large target than those small birds. In a moment, Silly realized that this was indeed an easier target. But her determination wavered as soon as she saw the fierce beast with sharp fangs. Noticing that she was losing self-control, Eris tried to calm her down. Firmly said that she was completely ready to defeat that creature with her skills, especially after mastering new techniques and gaining experience in battles. She then noticeably calmed down and immediately pulled herself together. Decided to make one last attempt. When she struck again, a magical beam appeared and pierced its thick scales. Celia could hardly believe her eyes that she herself had defeated this monster. Without hesitation, she immediately hugged Eris and thanked him for teaching her, but he modestly said that he did little and only showed her the technique. He also advised Celia to believe a little more in her abilities. He suggested returning to the village, but she gently called him modest because he did not fully acknowledge how valuable his help was. Soon they returned to the guild and reported the completion of the task at the reception, who seemed quite impressed by the effectiveness of the aerospace sphere and the ability to manage time. However, he admitted that during that mission, he did not fight at all. Instead, Celia herself defeated the magical birds with her sword. He said that he only watched her performance from behind, and it was entirely her merit. The receptionist did not believe that Celia could defeat such a number of magical birds with a single sword, and considered it physically impossible. Yet Celia stepped forward and said that she had learned an amazing spell from Eris. She also praised him, saying that he teaches very skillfully and could easily make the impossible possible. Ares thought he just wanted to support Celia from the side, but did not expect her to praise him so openly in front of the administrator. He could not help but blush at her admiring compliments, then smoothly interrupted the conversation, deliberately diverted the topic from himself, and instead reported on the completion of their task. Immediately after that, she began to check the delivered materials. But she felt that something was missing. He calmly reassured her and immediately took out what was missing. It was a giant wyvern, which Celia had previously defeated, and the receptionist was impressed to see such a formidable beast right in front of her, and doubted whether it was really the wyvern that Celia had defeated. But Ares sincerely looked embarrassed and asked if his appearance really shocked her that much. She declared without any hesitation that it really shocked her a lot, because that wyvern was one of the strongest magical creatures, which even B-rank adventurers could hardly overcome. Eris was genuinely surprised because he did not know about his such great power. It seemed that the squad of heroes effortlessly defeated such creatures, and the receptionist decided that they themselves were very strong at that moment. There was a risk whether the material wyvern would be sold for a good price, but the receptionist assured that yes, it would significantly increase their income. Then she quickly assessed the refusal and, meanwhile, she recorded the completion of the quest. Then she took their guild IDs. They updated their points for completing the quest. Now they amount to 30 out of 100. They were also given 1 guild point. And she additionally informed him that he would receive the next rank when these points reach 10. Diligently completing tasks and accumulating these points, people will eventually raise the rank of their adventure. Silly then asked if they could simply level up by completing simpler quests. The receptionist replied that it would not be a problem, but she noted that they need to complete at least one task from each rank to advance, so that unworthy adventurers do not get into higher ranks. However, the administrator at the reception immediately added that the E rank clearly does not suit them, because they have extraordinary abilities and strengths. Just then their evaluation was completed, and she was very surprised when she saw such a significant amount on the list. She reported that the reward for their quest was 50,000 jewels. and the bio price for the very fluctuation would be another 50,000 gems. When they left the guild, Silly was noticeably upset because she did not know what to do with such a large sum, as she had never received so much money at once before and was very afraid that it might be stolen. In response, Eris calmly assured her that in such a case they would simply go hunting again, but Silly added with a worried expression that it was hard-earned money of Eris. Hearing this, Arrest suggested splitting the 50,000 payment between themselves and giving the entire wyvern reward to Celia. He recalled that his former team of heroes constantly argued over the division of loot. But this time Eris wanted to divide everything fairly because Celia herself killed the wyvern, but she objected that she was not alone, and that they could not have defeated it without him, insisting that he receive the full amount. Hearing this, Oris could not help but call her kind. He gently suggested that she temporarily allow him to hold the money. Sliding the pouch into his item slot, he said he would use it to buy Celia a suitable weapon. She drew her sword from its sheath and said that it was a decent weapon, but Eris assumed that it was probably a decent sword from the market. Then he said that although the sword was good, this was not enough to reveal the true power of synchronization with the sword, and she would soon realize that this was lacking in many aspects. He advised to think ahead and to purchase a better sword in advance, and Silly was surprised that he thought so far ahead. He then said that they could even order a sword for 100,000 jewels that they had obtained. Hearing this, Silly became excited and asked if it was a gift from him, but he only said that it was a reward for her efforts. At the same moment, the party of the former hero Joris was struggling not to fall behind, and finally realized that kicking Joris out of the group was a big mistake. Although one of them could partially compensate with potions and healing skills, this was clearly not enough to recover the damage they were currently suffering. Other members assumed that Joris was simultaneously weakening the monsters and giving them buffs, but another said that he had never heard of such a possibility. They recalled that at that time they had kicked Eris out without any hesitation. Nardo made him shut up, and they realized that Eris had really tried to say something important before he was kicked out. Now they fully understood that Joris had been quietly supporting them behind the scenes all along. One participant even said that if she had known the truth earlier, she would never have allowed Nardo to persuade her to expel Eris. Nardo sharply approached and firmly grabbed her by the shirt, accusing her of hypocrisy and claiming that she was secretly plotting something too. And now they treated him like a villain. Moreover, he said that they all together decided to expel Eris from the party, so they were all equally guilty. Trembling, she apologized to him, and Nardo suggested not to dwell on the past, but instead focus on moving forward. More importantly, he inquired about the supply of healing potions, to which she replied that she had already spent the funds allocated for this month. Without hesitation, he simply ordered her to go to the store and buy more. She later reported that the repair of their damaged equipment after yesterday's brutal battle cost 800,000 gems, and if such problems continued, the living expenses for the next month would be severely affected. Nardo was silent for a moment, then said that Eris was a comrade who risked together with them, and that he would not refuse him if Eris wanted to return to the squad. It was clear that Nardo did not want to humiliate himself before his comrades after he himself expelled Joris, and he believed that if he was not careful, the balance of power in the group could completely change. Because of his sudden decision, the other members immediately agreed without much complaint. Nardo also promised that if he met Eris again, he would personally ask him to return. Meanwhile, the girl categorically said that Eros would never return after being expelled in such a way, but the other members made her be quiet, stating that a significant step forward was that Nardo even changed his mind. Moreover, he noted that he didn't even have the qualifications for adventures, and without them, he could no longer take on orders. They were convinced that he had to return because he couldn't earn money and find new comrades, but they didn't know that Joris had already formed a new group with his very reliable partner Celia. Meanwhile, in the weapons shop, the sellers refused Eris, explaining that they only work with available weapons and custom orders are difficult to fulfill. Silly thought that the bet she won brought her as much as 50,000 jewels, but she couldn't even order a custom sword. Eris suggested trying to convince the weapons merchants in the capital. At that moment, his attention turned to New York. People nearby said that the dwarf recently refused a job offer worth a whole fortune in jewels, and they didn't know how to persuade him. In this world, dwarves were famous for their craftsmanship, and Eris himself had heard about that master from the dwarf clan during his adventures with the hero party. Without hesitation, Aura approached these people and asked for more details. The man noted that Eris seemed somewhat familiar, and asked if he also wanted to learn about that dwarf master. In response, Oris confirmed and amusingly, with enthusiasm, said that he wanted a powerful custom sword. The man said that they went there hoping to also find good weapons, but that old dwarf was quite stubborn and simply refused to satisfy their request. Moreover, they informed him that the dwarf's condition was that he would make products only for those he considered worthy. The criterion for acceptance was only the ability to wield a sword. Later, Eris took out a map and asked if they could say where he was, and the man clearly pointed on the map in a certain direction. Noticing that the workshop was very close, Silly decided to go there the same day. Just then her stomach suddenly growled loudly and she blushed deeply, trying to justify this awkward sound. But he decided that it was better to go to the workshop the next day, and asked her not to overexert herself when she was so hungry. Suddenly a young girl named Sherrit accidentally bumped into a burly man and scraped her knee. She did not hesitate. Ares immediately approached and instantly healed her wound. Sherrit was stunned when she saw that her injured knee miraculously healed, so she sincerely thanked and quickly left. Silly tried to compliment his kindness, but her stomach betrayed her again with a loud rumble, and she felt completely humiliated. Ares' soft cackle only irritated her even more, and she scolded him for rudeness. The next morning they arrived at the workshop of the infamous gnome Gale and knocked on the sturdy gates. A short elderly man appeared and demanded to know why they were there. Ares apologized for coming without warning, introduced himself, and said he was looking for a master craftsman. Gale shook his head distrustfully and said that Ares was just another adventurer in search of a weapon. Ares informed him that they wanted to order a sword for Celia, and Gale, without hesitation, asked if Celia really deserved his custom sword. Before first asking to see her current weapon, he carefully examined her sword and noted that although her potential was truly impressive, she still lacked refined skill. He was convinced that if he entrusted his sword to an inexperienced person, she would simply abuse its natural power. In Celia, the expression on her face became gloomy. She resigned herself. She decided that she needed to improve her skills before daring to return, because she saw how easily they gave up. Gale said in surprise that after the refusal, they didn't even try to bribe their way inside, and Ares replied that Gale looked like a man who couldn't be bought with gold. Moreover, he didn't have enough money to buy them entry by any means. Although Gale found such honesty refreshing, his initial conclusion remained unchanged, and in a strange coincidence, Sherrit suddenly appeared, noting that her grandfather was once again sending adventurers away empty-handed. Then she met Ares and Celia, and thanked them again for their invaluable help the day before. Embarrassed, Gale asked if she knew them, and Sherrod confirmed, revealing everything that had happened the day before, shortly after that. Risk remarked that he could not believe the child they had saved would turn out to be his granddaughter, and it seemed they had managed to break through Gale's protective shell. He seemed to have softened a bit after learning about yesterday's event. Gale then said that they were not the bad people he had initially thought them to be, and that he would now immediately give them his sword. Celia seemed quite pleased with his announcement, and Sherrod said that her grandfather simply did not want anyone to misuse his valuable swords. Moreover, Gale said that if the adventurers were weak, they could easily lose their sword to a villain. Then he set 3 important conditions before them. First, Ares would retrain and master Celia's swordsmanship. Second, he would have a sword made by Gale himself. Having felt that Gale would make an individual sword for him, besides Celia's. Risk continued to interrogate him. Gale immediately stated that, in his opinion, Ares was the most skilled swordsman, and Celia had the greatest potential as a swordsman. Ares tried to explain that he was not a swordsman, but just a mage, but Gale insisted that titles were not important to him. He explained that if they were pure and strong swordsmen, that was quite enough for him, because it was his most cherished dream as a craftsman. Ares then asked if the last condition concerned gold, but Gale waved it off, saying that he already had enough wealth. He then named the last condition. It was necessary to bring more than 1 kilogram of spiritual stone. Soon Ares and Celia found themselves in the dense Bergam forest, which is called the Forest of Spirits. Ares could not help but notice that Gale really set the toughest conditions for their final task. In that forest, the energy of spirits quietly accumulated in various magical creatures. And at the very top of the food chain mostly gathered predators. When Celia carefully struck the monsters with a sword so that Ares could examine the stones they dropped, he noted with disappointment that even the large ones gave only about 30% of the required amount. Celia remarked that encounters with the strongest monsters depended solely on luck. Eris said they would have to be patient in their search, and Celia jokingly suggested that the monsters might come to them themselves. When he heard this, an idea immediately came to his mind, and he announced that they would lure the strongest monster with bait. But when she started asking about the bait, Risk directly said that it would be him, and Celia was completely stunned. It was not entirely logical, but Eris decided to present himself as bait, carefully regulating his magical power to attract attention, and so they could attract large predators because they would sense fluctuations in magical energy. Harris believed that if he held a strong surge of magic and then released it immediately, the largest beast in the forest would definitely show itself. Jairus immediately executed his plan, and, as he predicted, the most terrifying monster of the forest appeared. Its powerful steps shook the ground threateningly. Celia was clearly frightened by its sudden appearance. Eris quickly covered her mouth and made sure she was silent at that moment. A huge, terrible monster fully appeared before Celia, and she was overwhelmed with horror. Meanwhile, Eris calmly noted that due to the enormous size of the beast, they could obtain a truly gigantic spirit stone. That predatory beast ruled the entire forest and was known as Behemoth. A fierce enemy even arrests the one whom his former team could not defeat in his heroic days. Harris immediately devised a plan and ordered Celia to dodge to the right after the attack while he distracted its attention. He quickly created a magic circle right behind himself, drew the monster's attention, and the enraged beast lunged sharply at him. At the opposite corner of the field, Celia successfully released a beam of magic and precisely hit the brute. Ares quickly ordered her to dodge in a commanding tone and simultaneously created a wind arrow with his powerful wind magic. Despite Behemoth's innate affinity to the earth, Celia and Ares cleverly combined their magical powers and directed them at Behemoth with full destructive force. When the defeated monster lay before them, skepticism flickered in Celia's eyes. She could not fully believe that they had managed to topple Dihemida on their own. She praised Oroz's incredible strength, but he modestly said he could not have done it alone. She said she was just following his orders, and Eurus decided not to escalate and left it at that. He also claimed that a monster of such caliber should yield a huge spirit stone, and they went to inspect the fallen beast's body, after which they were very surprised. A tiny young girl with delicate wings was found curled up in its stomach, so small that she fit in both palms when Celia doubted the very fact of her existence. Eris confessed that because of her noticeable magical power, she could be a spirit living there, exactly then. The girl came to her senses and said that she had rested so well. When her gaze fell on two strangers, she calmly asked who they were. Although she looked tiny, Eris instinctively felt her enormous power, tens of times stronger even than giants. For now, he decided to behave cautiously around her and not scare her. Without long hesitation, Silly introduced herself to her as a member of the leisure group and even introduced her to him instead of him, despite his nervousness. The young girl happily introduced herself as Self, the infamous forest spirit. Seeing this, Iris felt relieved that it concerned only him. He was a little embarrassed because he was so suspicious, and Silly noted that he seemed unexpectedly shy. Moreover, he himself said that he rarely sees people so deep in the mountains. Having learned more about their business, Aris openly admitted that they came to look for spirit stones. Hearing this, Self-Preferfly paused for a moment. Before that, he concentrated hard to make a sturdy stone chair. Eurus was stunned to see the supreme spirit stone right in front of him, and immediately wanted to have it, so without hesitation, the stone was quickly handed to him. And generously offered to make even a double portion for them, and Ares could not help but admire this thing. Pondering its enormous weight, since even 1 kilogram of spirit stone was considered extremely rare. Although it was a dream come true for him, he noted that its scale far exceeded what they could pay for. Without hesitation, Salt innocently said that she could produce as many batches of those stones as she wanted. Then Silly explained to her that the spirit stones were formed from excess magical energy, and even the largest beasts usually only gave stones the size of a palm. Since there was nothing even close to larger than the previous model on the market, it was truly considered priceless. Harris also gently told her that he could not just take such a priceless item without offering anything in return. She simply said that she wanted to travel. Hesitating a little, he asked if that was really all she wanted, and she nodded. Moreover, Celia inquired whether spirits like her could really be outside the forest, and assured that she could live for several years outside the forest. With a sad expression, she admitted that she had long been stuck completely alone in that dim forest. It became truly unbearable for her, and she said that just talking with them greatly improved her mood and gave her strength. Aris and Silly exchanged glances, after which Urus extended his hand, inviting himself to join their adventure. When Aris activated the item slot to insert the spirit stone, I was quite surprised and asked if they could also enter the spirit world. He looked rather embarrassed by her remark, so she decided to demonstrate by quickly placing half of her form into the item slot. Aris realized that what he had long considered his personal item slot was actually the spirit world all along, and Self said that it was very spacious there, and more importantly. She said that for a human, the ability to enter the spirit world was truly amazing. On the other hand, Silly also called Aris amazing, which made him wonder why she was so proud of him. She told Self that she could freely travel from the spirit world, and that Aris had essentially become a spirit now, and Self jokingly called him Dad. This impressed him greatly. Seeing that he was completely speechless, she asked if she had said something wrong, but Aris replied that she came out of the belly of the Behemoth, so technically she was his child. However, she completely ignored his remark and continued calling Celia Mom, while Celia playfully enjoyed the game without any worries. Self also asked if she didn't like being called Mom, but Silly innocently said that she was genuinely happy to finally have a family. With a tender look and blush on her cheeks, she then said that Urus had finally become a father too. Hearing this, Aris was left completely astonished and utterly speechless when suddenly it seemed as if he and Celia were already a couple. He doubted whether he was feeling unwell, and Silly asked if he really disliked being called Dad. Seeing their sweet and innocent faces, he could not resist and simply accepted their reckless and playful decisions. In a few minutes, the three of them reached the village, and he was amazed to see so many people, while Iris thought they were looking at him because of his butt. Seeing how those people were staring so intently, she became embarrassed and lightly hid herself in the spirit world. But suddenly, the former team of Aris appeared before him, the same people who had cruelly expelled him from their group. Seeing them, Eros asked what they wanted from him, and Nardo asked him not to be so cold and reminded him that they were once comrades. Curious could not understand why they appeared out of nowhere after they had kicked him out of the party, but Nardo said that since Curious left. It seemed everyone had a lot on their mind, and he also thought that maybe he missed his former comrades. He then said that if he wanted, he might agree to accept him back into the hero team. Nardo added that Aris's name was still in the hero party registry, so his return was only a matter of time, and he still had a chance to rejoin the party. Although only 3 days had passed without Aris's decisive magical help, Nardo and the others gave up their pride much faster than he expected. With a barely noticeable intonation, Aris noted that everyone seemed to misunderstand something fundamental. He then said that he was not sure if they really wanted him to come back to the party, and added that they seemed to not understand their situation at all. Such a sharp comment left everyone speechless for a moment. Nardo responded aggressively that Aris seemed to have misunderstood their intentions. Other members also warned him that if he strayed from the hero's path, his rise to power would end, emphasizing that this was his last chance too. He was advised to reconsider his decisions, but Aris told them that he didn't care about being a hero or rising in the ranks, and quickly pulled the defeated giant out of the inventory portal above them, adding that he was completely satisfied with his position. He also said that he no longer intends to return to the party of heroes, and now the most important thing for him is that he has made truly important friends. Boiling with rage, Naruto called him Koki and threatened to immediately erase his name from the royal city's registers, warning that Urus would regret not listening earlier. In response, Risk warned him in a carefree tone, said that only time would tell who would regret more, and advised him to please Nardoodus. Shortly after their departure, Salt emerged from the portal and asked about those unfamiliar people, and Silly replied that they seemed to be the former hero team of Oars. Besides, Celia noted that they wouldn't hurt to ask more politely if they wanted to get it back so desperately, but Eri simply replied that their pride would never allow them to do so. On the other hand, she told them that she would hide in the spirit world whenever she felt the presence of other people besides them. After some time, they arrived at Gale's workshop and placed a chair made of spirit stone in front of him, which stunned him. Gale immediately put on glasses and carefully examined the object, aloud wondering how Eris could have obtained such a priceless material, and Eris explained it as a whim of the spirits. A remark that was not entirely inaccurate. Gale said that he had never before seen such a wonderful material. He expressed a passionate desire to immediately start working on that unusual product. Gale then ordered to work, and he diligently shaped it with precise hammer strikes so that he would like it. Aureus hesitated whether such an action would interfere with the magical formation of the spirit stone. Meanwhile, Sherrod came and suggested sitting down to drink tea, and soon Gale immersed himself in his work. Over cups of hot tea, Charette proudly told that such work would take an ordinary blacksmith days, but her grandfather quickly manages alone, having the strength of 100 men, and Celia noted that Gale is quite a boastful grandfather. He also asked if such a complex thing could really be forged so quickly, and Orst replied that modern blacksmiths also use magic. And the enormous magical power of Gale, which he felt earlier, confirmed the rumors about his impressive abilities. Then they asked the heir when it would be most convenient to return for the swords, but Sherache's answer so surprised him that he jumped up in disbelief, because she said that everything would be ready by the end of the day. He said that everything was happening too fast, but she still praised her grandfather for his efficiency and world-famous skill. It was then that Gale came and announced that the work was completed. He placed 2 miraculous swords before them and declared that these were undoubtedly his most outstanding works. As soon as Eris grabbed the sword, he immediately felt its amazing lightness and maneuverability. These swords did not directly use the spirit stone, but were filled with concentrated magic to significantly enhance the attack power. Celia was very pleased to receive her first custom-made sword. It was extremely light and easy to wield, but Jarest immediately warned her not to swing it carelessly. His efforts were in vain when a light movement of her sword caused a huge magical explosion that completely destroyed Gale's house and left everyone bewildered. There was a huge torn hole in the ceiling of the workshop. Celia was noticeably trembling and didn't know what to do. Although Gale realized that he really shouldn't have trusted his magnificent sword to such an inexperienced amateur like her. However, Eurus reacted instantly and easily used his healing magic to patch the large hole in the ceiling. Seeing this, Shur praised him for his excellent skills, and Gale finally sighed with relief. Meanwhile, Silly deeply bowed before Gale and sincerely apologized for ruining his native home, and he kindly told her not to worry and added that the house actually looked much cleaner than before. Moreover, Gale obtained a promise from them that Eris would take on the key responsibility for Celia and master the Sword of News himself. He firmly believed that Eris and Celia were naturally connected, and both carefully agreed before departure. Leaving the workshop, Celia apologized once again for her reckless behavior, and Ares advised her to be careful with the new sword and emphasized its extraordinary durability. At that moment, she seemed to appear out of nowhere, arched her back, and yawned widely, and when he asked if she was tired, she immediately denied it. Ares couldn't help but think that in some ways she really was childish. Silly suddenly shuddered and noted that the days were getting longer, but the nights were still cold. At that moment, an idea came to her mind, and with a slight smile, she reached out and gently took Aura's hand, saying that this would warm them for now, which made his face uncontrollably blush, on the other hand, jokingly remarking that they really looked like a couple. But Silly carelessly said that his hands were just very warm. Gently intertwining her fingers with his, she whispered that she would like to stay like this forever. Aura's face blushed. It would be worrying if she really didn't notice the awkward situation she was creating, but he thought maybe she was just exaggerating everything. At that moment, jokingly say that her mom and dad seemed to get along very well. She also asked if they were finally going home, and Aris said they were going to Celia's inn. Self coquettishly blushed and teasingly asked if they would stay in the same room, and Celia calmly replied that there was no free space for auras. Self called her amazing and jokingly called her mom, and Aris thought he had to be extremely careful with Self. It was then that they noticed a suspicious boy in a worn hood who seemed to be looking for a certain guest in a black cloak and was standing at a prearranged meeting place. When Aris walked further, the boy suddenly approached him, and when Aris asked who he was, the boy quietly motioned with his hand for him to enter the neighboring alley. Celia asked if he really knew that person, to which Aris replied that the boy did not seem particularly hostile, but at the same time was curious about the circumstances. Then something clicked in him, and he thought that the suspicious boy knew about his true identity as a former hero. Without hesitation, Aris decided to follow the boy into a narrow alley. The boy later apologized for disturbing them. When asked who he was, he said he was buying guild cards. Moreover, he believed he had extra guild cards and patiently waited for their arrival. Hearing this, Aris said that a personal guild card cannot be extra, and that trading such cards is strictly prohibited. It immediately became clear that the boy had mistaken Ares for someone else, and as soon as he realized his mistake, he tried to run away, offering them to just pretend as if they had never met. However, Oris firmly grabbed him by the hood and sternly said that the boy seemed fully aware of his guilt and would have to face the consequences for the sake of peace. When he quickly threw the boy into his spirit world, the boy said he did it only for profit and promised he would not do it again. Soon Eris and Celia came to the guild and immediately took out a stack of guild cards and placed them right in front of the receptionist. She was completely stunned when she asked what had happened. He told about all the details of the events. She reported that the loss and theft of guild cards had long been a problem, but before she could say more, a piercing scream of an unfamiliar woman rang in the air. She asked if they also had her guild card. When the crowd quickly gathered and began demanding their guild cards, the receptionist desperately asked them to calm down and take out their cards one by one. Seeing this chaos, Harris realized that the matter was serious and apologized for burdening her at that unfortunate moment. Moreover, he asked what would happen to the boy involved in this illegal activity. She replied that he would be handed over to security and then his parents would be informed. At that moment, the boy said that he had neither parents nor brothers or sisters and no one to call him, and everyone understood that he was an orphan. Eris said that he understood his feelings very well because he knew the pain of losing parents at such a young age. He also said that this did not justify his misdeeds, and that he must bear full responsibility for his actions. Harris then asked what would happen to the orphans, and the receptionist informed him that they would likely be taken in by an educational institution in the royal capital. When he heard this, Eris felt relieved, as he believed that young orphans like them should be given a decisive chance for rehabilitation. As they began to walk, the boy thanked him and said with a sad expression that he was barely making ends meet, hardly earning enough to support himself, and Eris silently observed his unkempt appearance. They found out that he was just a petty thug, and most of the money went into his boss's pockets. He then strongly advised the boy to leave the underground world, especially since Eurus had made efforts and saved him from a much worse fate. Moreover, when they finally started to leave, Horace noticed that the same women who had earlier loudly demanded her guild carriage were now standing with noticeably upset faces. Judging by her expression, she probably did not find her lost guild card in the found stack. However, Celia squinted slightly upon seeing him intently looking at another woman, and pouting, directly said that she was leaving. Seeing her strange reaction, he asked if everything was all right, but she insisted that she was not angry. Although her facial expression was still stubbornly pouting, soon they were shown standing in front of the task board. Celia thought about which quest to take to properly test her new sword, although she was still limited to E-level quests. Meanwhile, Heroes thought that he had spent a whole lot on his sword, so he wanted to complete some task to cover living expenses. Celia expressed concern and suggested simply surrendering and sticking to usual requests, but he rejected this and immediately handed her the task form. The task was to hunt a rank E golem. Golems were creatures with enormous destructive power and armor as hard as stone, but quite slow. Moreover, Orisa told her that even rank E adventurers could defeat this enemy if there were about 12 of them, so it would be a good target for beginners as well. With anxiety and sadness on her face, she asked if they were really going to fight enemies designed for a dozen people. He calmly assured her that now she was not alone as before, and that under his protection, not even a scratch threatened her. He also praised her independence. With a new wave of confidence, she agreed to fulfill the request, and Joris thought that praise from Celia and Dai constantly lifted her spirits. When Sultz entered the lush green forest, her face lit up with admiration, and she admired the scenery. The landscape turned out to be bright, spacious, and extremely refreshing. He thought that she had really stayed so long in that dim, solitary forest, and promised himself to fully enjoy the world beyond it. He reminded Celia of their task and quickly made a plan. First, he would distract the Gallic warrior with magic, and she would sneak up from behind and attack swiftly. As they carefully executed the plan, he himself became the bait in front of the huge, terrifying golem. When Eris beckoned Celia with a gesture, she rushed at the golem and struck it with all her destructive power, splitting the monster in half, and still not believing, asked if this was really the end. He confirmed that it looked that way. The Gale's sword was undoubtedly powerful, but by itself could not explain such extraordinary strength. Celia thought that the Gons in that area might be weaker than they expected, but Eris disagreed and quickly sheathed his sword, and said that they were almost indistinguishable from ordinary Galons, but when he tried to cut another one, he realized that their newly acquired weapon was simply too powerful. It seemed his personal development was ahead of current understanding, so he decided to tackle everything at once, claiming that facing them alone simply would not be an effective strategy. Celia doubted whether the Gons could really approach them all at once, and Eris, instead of explanations, decided simply to show what he was capable of. Quickly creating a magic circle, he subtly spread magic over a large area and immediately fixed the positions of all surrounding enemies. Then he successfully targeted the remaining 8 Gons and, using enchantment magic, endowed them with a threatening effect. When those terrifying Galons relentlessly advanced, Iris calmly said that with her current strength she could now handle such a number, and Celia was stunned that Iris's trick worked so flawlessly. In an extraordinarily short time, she smoothly and precisely swung the sword and effortlessly instantly defeated all the girls, which greatly impressed Iris. He praised her, saying that in 2 days she had honed the technique he showed her during the hunt for the monstrous bird, and for the first time agreed to take the sword. He also told her that these were only the basics, and there was still much to learn, which truly surprised Celia. When he collected the remains of the defeated Gons into his slot, he noticed that she absorbed power much better than he expected. As they began to retreat, some told her to return and added that she really gathered many scraps, but when he examined them more closely, he found a guild card of a woman named Yukina Rembrandt with the position of sage, the same very prudent woman who was desperately searching for her guild ID. Eris told Celia about the sages, explaining that they were one of those unique roles that stood alongside the sword saints. He foolishly and indifferently asked if they also wielded swords like her, but denied it. On stage was a master of magic, especially in offensive spells, who showed incredible talent. She enthusiastically asked about the chances that 2 unique positions could work together. And he explained that both of their works embodied unique talents important for the nation. He suggested immediately returning to the guild and reporting this important news, then gently patted Sultz on the head and thanked her for the invaluable help. In the guild house, Yukina was still desperately searching for the lost guild card and did not believe she could get it back. She further inquired about the fee for reissuing, and at the reception they told her it was a considerable 10,000 precious stones. When she began to clearly get nervous, Ares's team came with reassuring news and informed her that they had picked up her guild card on the way. Yukina was very happy when she saw the lost guild card, and also asked if her wallet was with it. Unfortunately, Aura said they only had the guild card so far. She explained that her wallet was snatched, and the thief simply discarded the cards. She sighed with relief when she got it back, and said she wanted to somehow repay the help. Harris told her not to worry, but she replied that this would not happen because she could have been taken somewhere else and seriously abused. He replied that there really are suspicious dealers who illegally trade guild cards, and that the risks are even higher than he initially imagined. Then she boldly stated that she had no cash on her, so she willingly would repay him with her body. This remark completely confused Eris and stunned Silly, who naively asked what she meant, but Eris stammered and could not explain anything. Realizing that it was a bit too early for Cilia to deal with such delicate matters, he turned to Yukina, hinting that she should pay a little more attention to her surroundings before saying such words. She simply sincerely said that she would gladly help him at every opportunity. Moreover, she sincerely and firmly said that she would be glad to repay his kindness. But he stammered and could not form a proper sentence in front of her. Her expression fell, and she quietly whispered that they seemed to consider her a burden who would hardly help in battle. However, Aureus looked genuinely surprised by her words, so she explained that she meant exactly what she said, and resolutely assured them that she was ready to put her heart and soul into helping with any request. At that moment, Eris realized with shock the innocent meaning of her careless words, felt relieved, and nervously said that he was very glad to accept her offer of help, and Yukina asked what suddenly embarrassed him so much. Yukina suddenly remembered her earlier. She made a careless remark and blushed with shame, could not look him in the eyes at all, and barely believed the words that had just slipped from her lips in front of a complete stranger. She admitted her mistake and said that she really should be more careful with her wording, and Eris kindly advised her not to dwell too much on it. Instead, Cilia was completely inattentive and did not notice the awkward situation, so she gladly invited Yukina to join their company, eager to set off together on interesting adventures. And all three immediately introduced themselves to each other. Eris said that he wanted to see Yukina's skills in action, and she with the same enthusiasm wanted to test his abilities. Eris declared that he would take control of the testing grounds, and the administrator gladly offered to lead them to the training area. On the testing field, Yukinen said with excitement that she would show her powerful magical strength, and Joris could not help but notice that she looked quite confident. Skillfully preparing to cast a spell, she quickly activated the offensive spell, Flame Beans, and released a lightning-fast beam that completely burned the straw scarecrow. Cilia was quite impressed with her display of power, and Eurus praised her flawless firepower. In addition, he fully scanned the testing ground. Yukina wondered if this exam place had always been so neglected, but she had no idea that the reason for this stood right next to her. The receptionist later told her everything that happened that day when Joris took the exam. Moreover, she gave Ori 300,000 gems for completing the quest and for bringing a total of 10 golems. The sum was divided between Arist and Cilia, each receiving 150,000, and Yukina was very surprised to hear such a large amount. And Celia modestly remarked that none of those achievements belonged to her. Moreover, Arik earned 70 guild points and even rose to D rank. Meanwhile, Yukina was left speechless when she learned that it took him only 2 tasks to rise from E rank to D rank, and at that moment, her stomach growled loudly. He nudged Erst to suggest that they go to the cafeteria and have lunch before moving on, but to his surprise, she sadly replied that she was completely out of money. He had eaten nothing since the previous day, and it really shocked him. With a determined look, Celia firmly squeezed her hand and said that one cannot fight on an empty stomach, insisting that he would treat her to lunch. Soon they arrived at the noisy cafeteria, and Yukina devoured everything placed before her as if she hadn't eaten in a long time, while Eurus watched her astonishing appetite. With a smile, Yukina praised the delicious dish and sincerely thanked them both. In turn, Celia praised her incredible appetite. It made Arik wonder how she dared to say that to her face. It seems Celia and Yukina get along well. While Iris thought Yukina looked like just an ordinary girl despite her unusual job, he began to interrogate her because he believed she had received numerous offers from everywhere to join teams. Because she was considered a respected wise woman, he also asked which team she was currently in, but she replied that she was traveling alone and simply could not fit into the team she once belonged to. She said that they just saw the future differently, and he thought that was a fairly typical reason for a breakup. Then Silly suggested that Yukina might have a deeper reason to be so picky about her future. She said she was searching for 7 magic tombs scattered around the world. Eris asked to confirm whether it was true that there was a legendary tomb that allows one to master various spells just by reading it. She replied that this was only possible for those who were truly worthy, and Ayres noted that it was a treasure that only the wise could comprehend. She added that Kay was a famous scholar in magic, and showing a neatly and precisely written collection of notes, said that these were his research records and they contained important clues to his spell books. When Eris asked who it was about, she replied that it was her late father, who died when she was still a child. She resolutely promised that she would definitely collect everything while she was alive, and this made Celia wonder why she resorted to such extreme measures. The reason was that her mother, who had cared for her all this time, had recently died. When Yukina was confused by loss and at the same time felt unexpected freedom, she came across her father's forgotten research. Eris now understood why she had so passionately collected these spell books and thought that she had been carrying quite a heavy emotional burden. Yukina also told him about her sincere desire to unlock the magic of resurrection after gathering all 7 volumes. Embarrassed and confused, he asked if she meant to resurrect her parents, and she admitted that it was part of her motivation. What troubled her most was the fear that she could lose someone dear again. Risk called her kind-hearted, but she modestly considered herself rather a coward. Eris understood very well the unbearable pain of losing a loved one. He was sure he would have done the same if he were in her place. But strangely, Yukina was connected not only by the death of her parents. Her sincere desire to master the magic of resurrection said a lot about her compassionate nature. She was truly a brave girl who genuinely justified the honorable title of a wise person. And the more Eris pondered her unwavering determination, the more he wished she were nearby. He believed that if she could fully reveal her extraordinary talent, she would become an invaluable ally for them, because she was exactly what was needed for his dream to defeat the Demon King. With many important thoughts in his head, he asked if she would like to officially join their party. He invited her to join his team, saying that together they could defeat the Demon King and fulfill her dream of traveling the world in search of ancient artifacts. Collecting magical tones from all over the world perfectly matched Yukina's aspirations, so he considered it a good idea. Although she admitted it was a good offer, she politely declined, and when asked about the reason for her refusal, she said that she simply was not suited for hero parties and preferred to act alone rather than in a group. Eris politely agreed, saying that forming a party is not always easy. She noted that in every clash with powerful monsters there is a high chance of parting forever, that is, losing a comrade, and moreover, they were talking about the Demon Lord himself. This only strengthened her resolve. Over the last 1,000 years, countless squads have bravely challenged the armies of the demon lords, but each time ended in defeat and ruin. Hearing this, Aura sought the real reason and found out that she was truly afraid of losing dear allies, and confirmed this without hesitation. She said that although she believed Oris's party would not disappear so easily, she still could not shake a deep anxiety. Although he admitted that a newcomer probably would not survive a direct fight with the Demon King, he decisively said that he would prove that they do not take reckless risks. Cilia intervened and said that she would do everything possible to impress Yukina and convince her to join their group. Moreover, Eris suggested that Yukina go with them to see how they perform the task, and so that she could respond to them more decisively. Starting with you, they would finally be able to take on a rank D quest. The transition from rank E was a completely different world in terms of difficulty and prestige, and one member of rank D was roughly equivalent to 10 members of rank E. However, Silly remained skeptical. If they were really ready to take on this quest, considering that it was a high-level rank D, their difficult task was to destroy 30 salamanders. Cruel lizard-like monsters living on the plains have strong jaws and powerful legs, and even an ordinary group of adventurers could not stand against them. However, Eris confidently said that they could not just waste their precious time and energy on weak monsters if they really wanted to show their combined strength. It was then that Eros heard Sulz's voice in his head, addressed to Koan, asking for permission to leave that world while she was manifesting. Yukina was surprised to see a graceful child. Self commented that the air outside was always so refreshing, and then greeted Yukina. Prompt Cilia to say that I would still be able to track everything, even hiding in the spirit world. Seeing a new person, someone playfully circled around Yukina, and Yukina asked who that child was. Eris named her name and introduced herself as a spirit, asking Yukina to be gentle with her because she had gone through a rather difficult period. Although Aruz initially hesitated to show himself before Yukina, he knew he could not hide her forever if he really planned to take Yukina into his team. The scene smoothly shifted to the Bergen forest near the plains, where Eris indifferently suggested that Cilia be the first to neutralize the enemy, and she was surprised by such an unexpected command. She rushed to him and hugged him tightly, desperately trying to oppose his decision, which made Eris blush a little. He knew she could handle it herself, but he was worried that due to nerves she would not be able to show her best. Yukina, noticing their behavior, quietly whispered to herself and thought that they might be a couple. Still blushing, Eris gently assured Cilia that they were a team, and he would definitely come to her aid if she ever found herself in danger. Cilia's behavior immediately improved after his calming words, and she immediately agreed to carry out his order. Soon Cilia bravely stood before the threatening monster, ready to strike. When the monster sensed her presence, she rushed at the beast without hesitation. The enemy's evasion was a bit faster than those encountered in E-level missions, so in a simple speed duel Cilia was at a significant disadvantage. However, as a holy sword, she had exceptional reflexes and royal instincts. And in hand-to-hand combat, the most important thing was to anticipate the opponent's moves. The reflexes of Cilia's Swift allowed her to manage to dodge the monster's attack when they rushed at her with lightning speed. She effortlessly dealt with them with quick, precise strikes, and Cilia finally repelled the terrible salamander. The auras praised her impressive skills, and after such a display of power, it was hard to remain completely silent. He turned to Yukina and asked if she was surprised and still stunned, and she inquired how long Cilia had to train to reach such a level of mastery. To her surprise, he admitted that Cilia had started special training only a few days ago and still had room to grow. This completely stunned Yukina. Then Eris demonstrated his refined skills and incredible abilities. He explained that their group acted cohesively, always carefully planning before battle. When Cilia was cutting down enemies with a sword, he quickly destroyed monsters with magic. In his assessment, their formidable group together corresponded to C-rank adventurers. This meant they could confidently show their skills against C-rank or even stronger challenges, but during his enthusiastic story about the powerful group, Yukina tried to intervene and say something important, but he ignored her words. His mind was fully occupied with an unwavering determination to prove that none of their comrades would die, which directly related to her deepest fear of losing dear allies in his carefully thought-out first move. He cast a powerful buff on himself and simultaneously applied a debuff on the horde of enemies. He planned to unleash Hellfire, a destructive, powerful version that would cause fireballs to collide harshly and explode with incredible force. Such a fusion spell usually requires enormous magical energy, which even very experienced mages cannot gather together. However, thanks to his unique harmonious magic, he he could effectively alter the very essence of the spell, allowing him to unleash its full power on his own. Aris was so focused on showing his immense strength in front of Yukina that he didn't hear a single word she said. Although he admitted that they too would not come out unscathed, he wisely created a barrier to protect them from lurking danger and carefully implemented his plan. A huge explosion that was growing rolled across the entire area and instantly destroyed all the monsters. However, when the dust from the explosion settled and Aris looked back to check on Yukina, he noticed that she had fainted and fallen to the ground. When Yukina came to, Uri asked if she really saw him in action. He admitted that perhaps he had overdone it a bit to convince her of his formidable power. Meanwhile, she acknowledged Silas's strength, but said that Aris was on a completely different level. On the other hand, she felt that she did not belong to their company and would only drag everyone down, but Cilia intervened without hesitation and confessed that she also felt like a burden when she first met Eros. However, Yukina replied that Cilia's past experience in the party and her rigorous training mattered a lot. She was surprised when Aris said that Cilia had also traveled alone before meeting him. He added that he can recognize people with true potential and asked Yukina to trust his judgment a little, because it seemed he had managed to convince her. He suggested that she try to capture the salamander herself. Yukina agreed without much objection, and she created a glowing magical sphere in her palms. She released a powerful beam towards the monster. However, she failed to knock it down with the first shot, so she quickly fired another to finally finish off the creature. Watching her demonstrate her magical powers, he noted that both the quality and quantity were excellent, and that she had a true natural talent, but she still had room to grow. He explained that usually, to master magic, one needs to train long and hard, and although intuition, developed through hard work, and experience were undoubtedly important, there was also a clever trick here. He then used the same magical powers and techniques as she did, and released a much more powerful strike that easily destroyed several salamanders at once. He took the fearsome claws of the fallen monsters as proof of the hunt, and explained that he left the initial magical power at the same level as hers, and even added a few refined techniques. Yukina opened her mouth in surprise when she saw the magical force shield 3 times larger than her own. He explained the technique step by step so she could understand everything. He started with fire beams and said that complex magic is actually a combination of simple spells, but a significant part of the magical power is lost in the process. So if they strengthen this connection, they will easily eliminate losses. She quickly understood his explanation and added that during the transformation, almost 70% of the initial power is lost, but Aureus was confident that it would withstand all that magic and amplify its power almost threefold. She considered it just theoretical assumptions and doubted whether it would work in practice. He answered her directly. She could simply use binding magic to smoothly combine spells. Then she clarified whether he would activate it additionally and if it would increase magic consumption. However, he objected. With a flick of his finger, he summoned a small spark of fire and said that it does not create fire or water inside you, but only uses part of the magic needed for ignition. But when she inquired about the exact combination of binding magic, his answer shocked her greatly when he simply said that he considers it simple magic. He added that in his previous group, participants expected buffs from several people, as if it were a usual thing. Self then politely intervened and reminded the embarrassed women that it is like overturning the usual, almost magical common sense. Then he took a stick and drew a simple human silhouette on the ground to show the complex magical scheme inside, and explained that it can be imagined as a binary system, where 1 means activity and 0 means inactivity. He continued that all magic can be precisely constructed from combinations of zeros and ones, and with the increase in the number of branches, they could actually turn on and off individual segments. She finally understood the complex concept and said that theoretically magic would have 48,816 combinations if the number of branches increased. But her face twisted when she realized that there were already over 1,000 combinations from just 10 branches and over 1 million with 20, and as if all magic was explained by these complex combinations. A spark of determination flashed in her eyes, and she quickly flipped through the pages of the book. She then tried all the magical spells, using the newly understood idea of binary combinations of zeros and ones. Her face lit up with excitement when she realized that she could now master countless programs and that the possibilities were almost limitless, and it reminded Eris that she really was the smart daughter of a scientist. Then she asked to confirm whether it was no longer necessary to collect spellbooks for resurrection magic. However, Harris gently refused and said that what he had deciphered was only part of how magic actually works. And especially when it came to ancient magic, he still could not fully explain some things. To demonstrate the power of binding magic, he carefully wrote combinations of zeros and ones on the ground and advised her to try this exact order first. When Yukina agreed, she created 2 simple spells and flawlessly applied binding magic to combine them as she was taught. Then she unleashed a barrage of large, fierce fireballs. She created a huge explosion that had never been achieved before. Admiration played across her face when she saw that she could control her true powers, and shortly after, she cleared the entire area of fearsome monsters. They were returning when Eris sincerely thanked Yukina for the necessary help, and she modestly said that she owed him a favor because she would have done it twice as long herself. She hesitated a little and asked if she would be allowed to officially join their group, and their faces immediately lit up with joy. Silly hugged her tightly and joyfully when she jokingly said that now she had a new mom. Eris warmly welcomed her at their party, and Yukina assured them that she would do everything possible to help. At the guild house, the receptionist was genuinely surprised because Yukina, who had previously been very reluctant to join a team, finally joined one, and meanwhile Celaya joyfully said that he really had a talent for attracting people. The receptionist examined the claws they returned with. They were proof of their hunt, but although sufficient, they seemed a bit weak to her. However, Yukina explained that the magic she was taught was so powerful that it accidentally melted the remains of those terrible salamanders. The administrator at the reception commented that Eris was truly outstanding as a teacher, but he casually noted that both Cilia and Yukina were simply very talented. This allowed them to learn much faster. He believed that a narrow perspective could not truly reveal a person's full talent. If they focused only on the near, they would not see the distant moon, but by removing the self-imposed limits of attention, they could clearly discern even the faraway moon, and Yukina considered this comparison amazing. Besides, she asked if they had already decided on the party's name, and he said they had not yet chosen a suitable name. Keep that in mind. After long deliberation, Eris quickly registered the name of their party Infinity. After some time, they finally ate, and Eris asked about her accommodation, and Yukina replied that in the morning she had no money to extend it. Without hesitation, Cilia suggested she live in their room for now. Hearing this, Yukina asked in surprise if they would really be living in the same room. When she looked at him with a curious gaze, he, stammering, said that it was only because of Celius's persistence. Although you really wanted to, I agreed to stay. The arrest thought to himself that they definitely needed to move to a bigger sun. At that moment, suspicious people in hoods suddenly approached them and said that Yukina had apparently lost the guild card. But when she checked, it was clear that it was not hers. To their surprise, the figures quickly grabbed Cilia and held her as a hostage, pressing a knife to her neck. One of the threatening men ordered Arrest to raise his hands and quietly approach. Eris asked why they suddenly appeared. Yukina replied that those bandits might be trading guild cards on the black market, and seeing that her words struck a chord, the bandit admitted that Yukina was quite observant. She casually said that it was obvious because only a person with someone else's guild card would conduct such suspicious business. Eris immediately remembered that boy and thought they had come to avenge their fallen comrade, but the thug replied that she didn't really understand that. He revealed that the boy was just a pawn, meant to be used and discarded, and what happened to him did not bother him. He aggressively said that he had put them in big trouble, but Eris, without any worry on her face, said that they would be ready for the consequences of running a shadow business in the capital. This angered the hooligan even more when he said he could simply sell 2 beautiful women to Rust to cover their losses, and that Evers would surely regret making them his enemies. However, Evers calmly said that in fact they themselves had made a critical mistake. At that moment, Achilia and Yukina respectively returned their sword and magical power. They quickly detained those bandits without much resistance. Their confused leader was stunned by the women's lightning-fast reaction, and Eris sneaked up from behind and grabbed him, and said that Cilia and Yukina were simply too strong for his men. Tightly tying all 3 with a rope, he ordered Cilia to call the royal guard. Meanwhile, the leader hastily offered Eris to pay more than the guild was paying him if he joined them. However, it turned out that Hears had not received anything from the guild for his actions. In fact, Eris decided to prefer a peaceful society without illegal trade on the black market, and also said that he works for his own benefit and principles, not just for money. Shortly after they arrived at the tavern, Celia asked why Eris did not help her when the bandit took her hostage, and Eris replied that he thought she could handle it herself and did not need his help. But there was still a powdered expression on her face. She slyly steered the conversation in another direction. RIS announced that the distribution of rewards needed to be discussed. In response, Yukina said that the contribution criteria were confusing, and usually they distributed rewards according to each person's contribution. Harris thought that although the damage dealt often favors offensive roles, support roles according to his principles should also receive a fair reward. To ensure a fair distribution, Risk stated that he would allocate 10% for party expenses and divide the rest equally among themselves. Yukina immediately objected to his decision, saying that it would be completely unfair to him because he undoubtedly contributed much more in battle. Even with this decision, he received more than when he was on the hero team. And Eris simply replied that everything would eventually balance out if they both became equally stronger. Inspired by his words, the two women felt a surge of motivation and decided to work hard together. Moreover, Aras suggested that, as group members, they pay for lodging together and consider moving to a new larger tavern. At that moment, Yukina immediately pointed to the crib and hurriedly asked if Eris and Celia really slept in the same crib, to which Celia answered affirmatively without hesitation. She also said that he often pressed tightly against her in his sleep, making it hard for her to break free, and at the same time she was still shocked that he really did that while she was asleep. Meanwhile, Yukina comfortably settled on the velvet couch and admitted that she hadn't experienced such a lively night and energetic day in a long time. Eris then gently stroked her head, but he immediately felt an angry look thrown at him, and when he met Celia's eyes, he couldn't find words to justify his action. Jealous of Yukina, she flopped onto the folding bed and suddenly asked him to stroke her the same way, while he stood confused. Having no choice, he settled between them and immediately felt their soft bodies pressed against him, blushing with embarrassment. The next morning, Yukina greeted him, and, seeing his expression, said that he seemed to have rested little that night. Only Eris knew the real reason why he couldn't rest properly. Soon they came to the dining hall, where a large crowd had gathered because there was a note on the gate saying the dining hall was closed due to a serious shortage of supplies. As soon as Eris entered inside, he immediately felt a terrible stench that enveloped everything around. They moved on and discovered that the entire stock of ingredients had spoiled, and the chef said that all the food had gone bad overnight. Seeing the spoiled food, Yukina immediately understood that the spoilage occurred due to a violation of magic. Natural magic in the land sometimes became chaotic, and there was a high probability that it accidentally turned into decay magic. When Eris looked more closely at the pantry, he could not believe that the entire stock had spoiled overnight. To everyone's surprise, Orst picked up the rotten apple and tried to bite it, which completely confused Celia, and Yukina, seeing this, advised her to look more closely. To her surprise, the rotten apple miraculously became fresh. Eris realized that he could use his skill of restoration and enchantment to return the food to the state of the previous night, when it was not yet spoiled, and with one smooth motion, the entire spoiled area instantly restored to its previous appearance. The expressions on the cooks' faces, which were previously gloomy, immediately turned into genuine joy. He sincerely thanked, and when asked how he could repay, Uri simply said that truly delicious food would be the best reward for their efforts. However, Uri's had exhausted his life energy so much that he was noticeably staggering on his feet and could barely stand, so Celia and Yukina quickly came over to help him. Yukina claimed that his magical reserves were clearly depleted after such a powerful spell, and advised him to eat nutritious food and rest well to recover quickly. Sent Numadiatnid, the cook immediately ordered his colleagues to help him prepare restorative dishes without delicacies. After some time, they comfortably settled at the dining table when Yukina, with slight surprise, noticed that even Eris could exhaust magic, and he modestly replied that he was human too, just like them. Moreover, he sincerely asked the chef not to tell anyone that he miraculously revived the ingredients, but the chef said it was a good opportunity to become famous. Meanwhile, Celia proudly said that it was his humility that made him so incredibly cool. Aureus explained that if the widespread magical disruption really covered the entire area, it was most likely in very bad shape, and he was quite unable to restore everything on his own. So the cook also agreed to keep the event a secret, and when everyone finally left the dining hall, Yukina said she couldn't believe that all the ingredients spoiled at the same time. Moreover, he admitted that the magical disruption was very troubling. The Earth Magical Rebellion was considered a harbinger of a magical catastrophe, and it would likely cause serious consequences. They went to the guild house, and surprisingly all the guild members were already standing before them, and the receptionist with a joyful smile reported that Eurus had easily restored the spoiled ingredients and that clear traces of magical magic were found. He was stunned and could not believe that everyone suddenly found out about his enchantment magic. However, one of the members said he had heard rumors about a new sorcerer who would join the hero squad. And Erida immediately took advantage of this fortunate distraction and declared that man a true wizard, temporarily avoiding trouble. Then he quickly turned to his comrades and suggested they immediately look for new requests. Moreover, he felt relieved because someone had already taken his place in the hero party, and now he would finally get rid of the constant pursuit from former comrades. As soon as they went inside, they were surprised that there were strangely few application forms on the wall, and they allowed guessed that it might be due to a recent magical disturbance. Although when Eris tried to get the form, everyone heard it aloud. The sinister third from outside, which completely surprised them. Eris immediately decided to check the commotion, but due to the dense crowd, nothing was visible. They decided to go upstairs and observe from there. He was in complete horror. He came across a newly built cage for gorillas, ominously restricted by a timer. The terrible consequence is that monsters will fill the entire village if the magical barrier breaks in 3 hours. Ari looked sadly. It was the same type of dungeon that tragically appeared in his hometown 6 years ago. Although the hero and reinforcements from the capital eventually suppressed it then, it happened only after the entire village was completely destroyed. This time, Eris decided to evacuate everyone first because he sincerely wanted to save lives. He quickly made a plan to get everyone to the neighboring village within the critical 3 hours. When Celia and Yukina started to go, he activated his detection magic throughout the area and gave everyone increased movement speed. Immediately after this, the group was overwhelmed by a sudden lightness that filled them with energy and allowed them to run much faster. Stunned, Yukina asked if he really gave this powerful spell to everyone, and Eris replied that such a level of magical load was not a problem for him. 6 years ago, he decided that if such a tragedy happened again, he would do everything to prevent it at any cost. Just then, the receptionist appeared and warned them about the sudden appearance of a dungeon, asking to send a hunting group, although it was obvious that Ares' group would go. He admitted that they did not want to be just a hunting group, but aimed to act as an advanced squad. Impressed by his bold request, she doubted that he really wanted to act alone and advised him not to take risks, even if he had great powers. He explained that these monsters did not act in groups, so they had to fight enemies moving alone, and he concluded that a small elite team was much more effective than assembling a large ordinary hunting group. Moreover, he said that he was not really alone, hinting that his dear comrades Celia and Yukina would support him. The administrator asked them to be careful. Meanwhile, Joris ordered his people to quickly bring all the necessary potions. Before moving further into the crowd to offer help, to his surprise, his former comrades appeared unexpectedly, and Nardo told them that civilians would follow their example, but Yukina intervened and sharply said that there was no such rule and that they had not yet received any specific orders from the capital. With a confident look, Naruto declared that they were the ones in command. Irritated by his cheeky remark, Risk called him incredible for still rating himself so highly and added that in fact they were the ones ahead. Nardo sharply responded, accusing them of selfishly wanting to take all the credit. He then asserted that he would immediately head to the dungeon if that was really the case. However, others wisely assured Naruto that there was no need to rush, as they had not even prepared enough supplies yet. Despite everything, Nardo resolutely ordered his comrades to move forward and enter the dungeon. As they were leaving, Yukina said that the group of heroes would truly be ashamed to fall behind in conquering the dungeon, and Eris sincerely pitied the new blessing mage, who was now assigned to support them. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeon, the hero squad was engaged in a fierce, chaotic battle with terrible monsters, and Nardo despairingly said that the damage they were suffering was as if they were completely defenseless. He fiercely demanded an explanation of what was happening, to which the new mage replied that he was giving all his strength and his enhancement magic was fully active, but Nardo instinctively noted that Eurus had always done much more than he was managing now. Another participant intervened, advising Nardo not to argue with his comrade, and sternly warned that he would definitely suffer if he carelessly lowered his guard. Thanks to their joint desperate foresight, the group used their various skills and magical abilities to defeat the monsters inside while they fought recklessly. Nardo was able to corner the terrible creature and immediately ordered Crayoni to use her powerful attacking magic. But she was already occupied healing another wounded comrade with her precious magic. The creature quickly swung its huge tail and slammed Nardo into the ground. Meanwhile, Cranon reported with tension that they had completely run out of magical power. The new member doubted whether they even had an antidote, because the bacillus poison was a deadly toxin that mercilessly counted down the time. Due to carelessness, Nard allowed the saliva of the camouflage monster dripping in front of him to get on his bare arm, which caused a strong reaction and rapid swelling. He desperately begged someone to give him an antidote. Macrainer anxiously reported that they had completely run out of healing potions and wisely suggested leaving the dungeon immediately. Moreover, the new mage said he would have brought more supplies if he had known about such serious consequences. Soon, Eris's party confidently entered the dungeon, and Yukina quietly expressed hope that the heroes' party would not complain upon seeing them. In response, Eris noted that they could not afford to complain. At that moment, a monstrous roar echoed through the dungeon, immediately alerting everyone present. As they advanced further, they saw that the heroes were in even worse condition than before and noticed a terrible basilisk. Oris admitted that they should have come a little earlier. Activating his magic circle, Arrows quickly fired a fiery piercing shot and released a blazing beam at the creature, which rendered it completely immobile. Celia and Yukino again praised his powerful skills, while his former party companions remained stunned and speechless. Seeing this, Krana called him unfair for sneaking out of the party and now boasting such impressive offensive magic. In response, he calmly repeated the same harsh words that Nardo had said to him, and added that the decision was already made and there were no explanations. He was fired. He also said that Flame Pearson's shot was an advanced use of blessed magic, which he tried for the first time after Exile. More importantly, when he pulled a vital healing potion from the inventory slot, he said that this was exactly what they desperately needed at this critical moment. Seeing the antidote, Nardo's face lit up with great joy. I will ask a silly question. Did Urs foresee this situation in advance and prepare those necessary potions? Risk briefly explained that the partisan dungeon was a very isolated place where magic was quickly depleted, and most monsters were aggressively elemental. Moreover, if there was not enough supply of potions, they could be struck by deadly poisoning or paralysis, and simple treatment would do little good, leaving them dangerously immobile. With a firm expression, he admitted that it was his first time entering this dungeon, and the environment and combat tactics of its inhabitants were completely unfamiliar to him. Then he suggested that they act prudently in everything they did. Then he gestured for them to move forward and clearly indicated the direction of the exit portal. To his surprise, Nardo addressed him directly, his voice sincere as he emphasized that he truly counted on him. Aris never imagined that the day would come when he would hear such words from Nardo. He thought that Nardo had probably finally faced reality and therefore became so unexpectedly frank. Aris assured him in a resolute tone to take everything under his care. As they walked, Celia, with keen interest, wanted to know if Eurus had already predicted the exact characteristics and types of monsters in that dungeon, but Eurus apologized to both of them for dragging them into such a dangerous situation. And he was very worried that a once world-famous team of heroes had ended up in such a state. Yukina grumbled that they were so obsessed with appearances that they couldn't even protect their teammates. But Aris calmly replied that these were still his old familiar places. Hearing this, Yukina was surprised because she realized that he was truly from the same party of heroes, and Evers realized that he had never really told her about it. He immediately apologized to Yukina if his past had somehow made her feel uncomfortable. However, she calmly replied that she rather felt relieved because he was an outsider like her, and that she liked him as he was, not just because he was a hero. Eris's face noticeably flushed from her words, and her cheeks also reddened when she hastily clarified that she meant a person. Suddenly, Celia appeared between them, and both shuddered and were surprised, and pointed forward, saying that there were many doors at their destination. As they walked past those numerous doors, Silly asked if it was possible to just hastily open any door, but Orissa shared her opinion. At the same time, he activated the area scanning skill, which immediately detected a swarm of dangerous monsters lurking behind those doors. Yukina thought that they definitely wouldn't make it if they opened all the doors, so she advised to keep going for now. They moved a little further and came across impressive doors with several keyholes. It seemed to them that the dungeon boss was deeper, beyond this formidable barrier, and that they would need many keys to reach the doors. Due to the large number of lock holes, it was clear that the keys were deliberately hidden behind those numerous doors, each having one. Silly told Alv that they would have to defeat the monsters at each gate, and when they moved there, Haris quickly stopped them. He accidentally pulled Yukina's belt. She blushed and immediately warned him not to grab her in such a place. Since they needed to collect only 20 keys, Aris explained that they did not have time for such a lengthy process. The simple way was not suitable, and it was pointless to ask if there was some hidden method to open those doors. But Aris showed that everything was much simpler than they imagined. Forming a powerful magic circle, he unleashed a huge fire explosion directly at the massive doors and instantly blew them apart with pure force. Meanwhile, Cilia and Yukina were mostly embarrassed by his action, as they did not expect him to use such brute force, and when the doors opened, a formidable dragon appeared before them. Without wasting a second, Aristocler immediately drew the dragon's attention to himself. They quickly ordered Cilia to attack from behind, and Yukina skillfully supported them from the rear. The massive dragon's maw opened and unleashed a powerful stream of fire that covered everything around, and Eris instantly appeared behind it and fired an accurate piercing fire shot. Yes, a formidable beast, although not a single scratch remained on its exceptionally hard scales. As ordered, Silly came out from behind and precisely struck the monster with her sturdy sword. However, when Eris was complimenting her skills, the dragon cunningly took advantage of the moment and captured her while she was distracted. Panic-stricken, Eris quickly prepared for another desperate attack, but Yukina's voice sharply ordered Cilia to dodge. At the same time releasing a powerful attacking magic towards the dragon, Celia was saved, and Draydenly was wounded. When the beast was momentarily motionless on the ground, Aruz took advantage of the moment, rushed forward, and struck a precise blow, so the mighty dragon was finally defeated. Their victory was reported throughout the district. They stood outside, breathing a sigh of relief because they had finally cleared the dungeon, while Eras simultaneously cast soothing restoration and spells on them. Yukina proudly said that this was undoubtedly the fastest record in history for Eris, who had passed the difficult dungeon so quickly. He said with a warm smile that he definitely did not do it alone, and all three achieved it together, acting in coordination. He admitted that if it weren't for Silly, who was precisely targeting attacks on the scenes with Drigan's scales, he would not have noticed its weakness. And without the timely help of Yukina, Cilia confessed that she would have been torn to pieces. Stammering, Yukina modestly said that she did nothing special, just attacked from behind, but Iris still praised her for the important help, and her cheeks blushed with shame. He additionally emphasized that in the dungeon, where the magic consumption was extremely high, there were almost no adventurers who could effectively attack with magic from such a distance. He gently took her hand and offered a healing spell, and she skillfully expressed sincere gratitude. Jealous of their closeness, Cilia quickly squeezed between them and firmly grabbed Eris, clinging dramatically because she felt pain and desperately needed his immediate help. Meanwhile, Yukina could not help but giggle at the lively energy of their bright party. She quietly spoke to her deceased parents, mentally feeling that she could really get along well with these people, and at that moment, suddenly something appeared from somewhere, and gently thanked both her mothers, Celia and Yukina, for allowing her to go outside, because it seemed that everyone had already been successfully evacuated from the village. She jokingly thought that now she could finally steal anything, but Celia quickly scolded her for such thoughts. Ares also thought that for a person who seemed like an innocent child, these thoughts were egocentric and dangerous. Seeing that they were standing so close, she jokingly said that auras had successfully stolen the hearts of her mothers, but he, blushing, explained that their closeness was simply an effective way of magical restoration. She also told him that if it was normal for Cilia, it was very rude for Yukina. Her face was red as a beet, but he tried to explain to himself that it could be due to exhaustion from magical energy depletion. Then Yukina suddenly turned around and assured him that she was fine now, and Yuras explained to Sulf that there really was some distance between him and Yukina. Cilia called him hopelessly distracted. He thought to himself that cooperation with Yukina was only for their common goals. That day, after conquering the infamous partisan dungeon, they took another important step toward their great goal, to restore peace in the world. He decided that together with Celia and Yukina, he must continue to grow in order to eventually defeat the mighty Demon King. Meanwhile, the royal guards quietly talked in the corner of the village, suggesting that the party of heroes should have retreated, while others proposed simply reporting everything immediately to the palace. The scene smoothly shifted to the royal palace of the Male Kingdom, where the respected king, husband of Floyd, proposed appointing a new ideal hero who would truly be unique for their nation. The minister replied that even if they were heroes of the Alliance, finding adventures that surpassed them was a real challenge. However, Floyd confidently said that it has already been proven that such extraordinary people really existed. 3 days after the victory over the dangerous partisan dungeon, Horace's group entered a bustling market, where the shop owner immediately recognized them as true heroes who overcame the recent crisis. She came closer and asked if Eris really was a former hero, and if she needed to hide it, which made Eris realize that almost everyone had already guessed about his past. Cilia then asked for 4 loaves of bread, and when the shop owner saw her, she was clearly impressed and called her a beauty. Many asked if she was Eros' girl, which clearly embarrassed Eros, but Cilia calmly denied it and proudly introduced herself as the sword Saiyan of the group. Hearing this, the lady generously gave her the whole bag of bread instead of 4, and Silas's face immediately became joyful. Another seller said that the village miraculously came to life thanks to their heroic efforts, and even the fruits became much juicier. Yukina, as always learned, explained that the closure of the dungeon significantly stabilized the local magical flow, and the merchant praised her deep knowledge and asked who she was. Eris came out and proudly introduced her as Wise, telling that she made a significant contribution to the group's recent success. The seller was very pleased to hear this. He quickly gave her his juiciest fruits as a sign of gratitude, and immediately shop owners and sellers throughout the market showered them with gifts and sincere thanks. Both Cilia and Yukina clearly enjoyed the attention and gratitude they received, and another seller said. Nardo's group noted that they confidently passed through the village, but when the decisive moment to help came, they quickly retreated. Another added that Harris's group was much more reliable. The entire market generously expressed to them a shared sincere gratitude for the timely and decisive assistance. Later, when they finally broke through the huge crowd, he sighed with relief, which prompted Yukina to ask if he was tired. He said he had never had such an experience before, so he was not used to public attention, and when they came to the guild house, the administrator immediately apologized for calling sharply when he was supposed to be resting, but Eurus replied that 3 days were enough rest and asked what the urgent matter was. She said she had an important letter, specifically for Aris, and ordered him to go to the inner room. At that moment, Eris clearly realized that his past as a former hero was now known to everyone. While the receptionist was leading them, Celia noted that usually no one was allowed there. But at the reception, they said that it was their private office. She informed the group that after quickly completing the quest in the dungeon the day before, they received a letter directly from the capital. And given the unusual speed of delivery, it was undoubtedly from a carrier pigeon, so it was extremely important to them. When Eris asked who it was from, she said it was a letter from King Floyd of the Kingdom of Men, and it really impressed him. When he skimmed through the letter, it clearly stated that the king personally congratulated them on the swift and decisive conquest of the dungeon, and the letter also announced the upcoming dissolution of the Allied Heroes Party and the simultaneous creation of a separate Heroes Party for the Kingdom of Men. Most importantly, it proclaimed that the honorable leader of the new party of heroes will be Eris, full-raced, and self. Cilia and Yukina were very happy to hear about this achievement because they believed that their incredible feats in the dungeon were finally officially recognized. Self also appeared on the spot, and with a smile said that although she does not understand such things very well, it really sounded impressive. The receptionist said that this is quite logical given Arrow's incredible achievements, but it is truly impressive that the king personally nominated Arrow. Cilia said she did not understand why create a completely new party if you can just add Ares to the current one. In response, Yukina said that this party is only a coalition, essentially a multinational army funded by neighboring countries. But due to the prolonged absence of major battles with the mighty Demon King, many countries increasingly refused to provide financial assistance. And as a result, there was a severe shortage of funding, which inevitably led to a decrease in the number of talented adventurers. Additionally, the situation significantly worsened since 6 years ago when a partisan prison appeared in Aris's hometown. Since natural disasters could happen anywhere, aid to the victims was prioritized over conquering the Demon King, and countries began actively investing in their urgent needs. The receptionist also reported that the Allied Party of Heroes was abandoned after the recent retreat from the dungeon, and it seems the king decisively decided to create an independent party of heroes solely to protect the kingdom. Silly finally seemed to realize the full seriousness of the situation and proudly declared that Ares' time had come, and Ares reluctantly called it a very positive interpretation. Moreover, he said that his ultimate goal still remains to defeat the mighty Demon King, and joining the party of heroes will only be a temporary distraction. However, the respondent said that painful memories of the old party of heroes are extremely hard to forget. This made the administrator suspect that something was bothering him. To her surprise, Oris asked if there was even the slightest possibility of refusing the prestigious nomination to the new party of heroes. She clarified whether he meant refusing the leadership. He explained that he meant becoming a hero in general, and this revelation stunned everyone in the room and caused a deep silence. She was still shocked and stammering, replied that refusing a royal decree had never happened before, and Celia and Yukina desperately tried to convince him, saying that refusing such an honor would be a great loss, and that he should still participate despite obvious hesitation. Meanwhile, Eris could not understand how to explain all his complicated feelings to everyone. Meanwhile, in the great audience hall of the Kingdom of Men, Gaius Sheffield, Farrah Forrest, Silas Istria, and Miguel Bro were present, previously appointed as new honorary heroes of the Kingdom of Men, or by the king himself. Next, Floyd raised the question about the leader of the party. Gaius quickly calmed him down and confidently said that he would handle it easily because he had led an A-ranked team for years and was confident in his leadership abilities. However, Floyd calmly said that the leader had already been finally chosen, although he was not there at that moment. Gallius immediately apologized for his mistake and immediately asked about the identity of the leader, to which Floyd replied that it was none other than Eris Fale. Gallius immediately realized that this was the same experienced spellcaster from the former party of heroes, and it clearly surprised him. Instead, Floyd cheerfully noted that although it had not yet been officially announced, he heard that Aurus single-handedly conquered the partisan dungeon. Floyd proudly said that even after he stopped being a hero, Eris persistently tried to save people, and his spirit and natural strength were truly extraordinary. Floyd believed that he fully deserved such an honorable title. Instead, Gallius broke out in a cold sweat, realizing that the leader of the party of heroes had enormous power. He knew that under the direct name of the king, the leader would be granted enormous power and influence both within the party and beyond. Gallius could not understand why he was not chosen, although everyone recognized his skill, and for years he had led many squads to success. He considered it humiliating to come to that great stage to work under the command of some guy named Arrest. He firmly believed that if he had been the first to encounter the dungeon, he would undoubtedly have been chosen as the leader, not Russ. Meanwhile, Fear wondered if the group leader could change later. Floyd replied that although he was not considering this topic now, it could arise in court discussions once every few years. Then he informed that in a few days Eris would arrive at the capital and officially join them, so he ordered everyone to stay in standby until then. Gallius became increasingly outraged and thought that the king was simply using the retreat of the previous group of heroes as a convenient excuse and overestimated Ares too much. Moreover, he bitterly thought that if Eris simply did not exist, the king would have been forced to choose him for the position. When he set out beyond the capital, a sinister plan to get rid of Evras was born in his mind, although he did not yet know what kind of person he really was.